This is the fourth in a little series that I'm doing on the subject of navigating, the art of navigating through life. And in previous weeks, we looked at the idea of the golden thread that we can use to follow our path through life. It's a connection with the divine that leads us to respond appropriately to the circumstances that comes to us in our lives. And I said that the evidence that we've found that golden thread is when we feel a peace in our hearts, no matter how difficult the circumstances are. You know, that peace that passes all understanding. And last week we looked at that channel of peace that Francis speaks about in his prayer that begins, "Make me a channel of your peace." By arriving at that place of peace in ourselves, we become that channel. We also spoke about the difficulty in life coming from the perception of opposites, the idea that we have to choose between one and another. But in reality, I was saying that opposites fulfill each other rather than compete. We don't have to choose between the two. We contain both opposites. And just to say, if you want to be in our mailing list, the little blue bit of paper in front of you, you can use that. Or if you want to listen to the past episodes and catch up on the series, the red bit will tell you how to do that. What we think are opposites, things we think we have to choose between, are really different places on the same spectrum. Birth and death are different places on the spectrum of life. Male and female, sweet and sour, different places on a spectrum. Even left and right in politics are different places on a spectrum. And when we realize this, we can see ourselves as within that spectrum, and we can know that the spectrum is one that's inextricably connected. And, you know, I showed you previously the yin and yang, where opposites are connected and they're within each other. We're both within each other and we fulfill each other rather than having to fight each other. We can therefore, in a sense, be at home within each other because it's contained. And I think it's by holding these opposites together rather than trying to have one cancel the other out that we're able to be at peace in our lives with the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and deal with all the circumstances that come our way. So our minds and our hearts are brought in line and we can see clearly what's going on. And there's a peace also in that clarity when we can see that. Because we're brought back to the present moment and we can deal clearly whatever's coming our way. And today I want to talk about how we use that idea of opposites fulfilling to navigate our way through life. But before that, I want to go back to something that I mentioned in passing last week. And I said, you know, you either buy into the idea of a divine order or you don't. You either buy into the idea that there's a fundamental order in life or you don't. And you know, repeated this story many times before, but there's that famous story reported about Einstein, which people say never happened, but, you know, there's no point in truth getting in the way of a good story. So when asked Einstein, when he arrived in the America by a reporter, something like, "What, in your opinion, is the most important question facing humanity today?" Einstein thought for a bit and then replied, "I think the most important question facing humanity is the universe a friendly place or not?" This is the first and most important question people have to answer for themselves. For if we decide that the universe is an unfriendly place, then we'll use our technology, our scientific discoveries, and our natural resources to achieve safety and power by creating bigger and bigger walls to keep out the unfriendliness. and bigger weapons to destroy all that which is unfriendly. And I believe we're getting to a place where our technology is powerful enough that we may either completely isolate or destroy ourselves as well in the process. But if we decide that the universe is neither friendly nor unfriendly, and that God is essentially playing dice with the universe, then we simply are victims to the random toss of a dice, and our lives have no real purpose or meaning. However, if we decide that the universe is a friendly place, then we will use our technology, our scientific discoveries, and our natural resources to create tools and models for understanding that universe, because power and safety will come through understanding its workings and its motives. So if you buy into the idea that the universe is a friendly place, and you want to find ways of cooperating with it, and you're buying into the idea that you're part of something infinitely more powerful and creative than anything that you or me or anything else on the planet could dream up, if you do buy into that, then it changes our perspective. Not only are we all a part of that, but also we have access to it. And it has access to us. There's a two-way to it. Now, I don't think this is an academic conversation. I think it's about the nature of reality. And when I realized that in my life, that the universe was a friendly place and there was a connection, I decided to commit my life to exploring that relationship. It's the bedrock of everything that I do in my life. Every day I try to work out how to understand that relationship, both with my heart and my mind, and how to cooperate with that relationship. I looked at it and I reckon I spend 50% of my waking time doing that, because I don't think there's actually anything more important in life than working that out. That is the most important thing in life to work out. And for me, it governs what I eat, what I drink, how I behave, how I work out what to do, how I work out what to say. And I do that because I've worked out that whatever anyone else says or thinks, I have an experience that by cooperating with that order at the center of all things, I am making a difference that is completely disproportionate to what the world thinks that little old me is capable of. Now, I don't know what that difference is that I'm making. I don't know the effect I will have today or tomorrow or the next year or the next century, but I know that I'm dealing with something that is beyond rational understanding. As Paul says, I'm convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God, from that love, that wisdom. Nothing can separate us from that. And that's what we're dealing with here, that essential wisdom. And as Thomas Merton prayed, my Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I don't see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I'm following your will doesn't mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope that I have that desire in all that I'm doing. I hope I'll never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. It's a wonderful prayer. I don't know where I'm going, but if my heart is in the right place, I know it's okay. That's the attitude of one who is attempting to cooperate with the friendly universe, or the love of God, as Paul puts it. Now, the question for you, as I said at the beginning, is, do you buy into this? And if you do, are you prepared to put your money where your mouth is? Now, this isn't a roundabout way of introducing gift day. What I mean by this is, if you buy into this, are you prepared to make that internal commitment to working with and cooperating with that friendly universe by the way that you live your life? Are you willing to invest in that relationship by becoming that channel of peace, as we spoke about last week, and by devoting time and energy into exploring how that might work out in your life? And all I'm really trying to say here is that it's simply worth considering that little old you can make a difference to what's going on in the world. Because the power you have access to is real and consequential. Even if, as the Psalms say, it is too wonderful for us to understand. And what difference can you make? How do you make that difference? Well, I think it comes back to those opposites. This is where I'm, having said, you can make a difference. Now, it comes back to those idea of opposites. The opposites are not things you have to choose between, but they fulfill each other. And the opposites are on that spectrum: birth and death, black and white, male and female, left and right in politics, all on the same spectrum, even though they present as opposites. And, again, you can see in the yin and yang symbol, the white contains the black, and the black contains the white. Now, how does this affect the way we navigate our way through life? Well, there's a part of us that sees the dark and the way that it manifests. We have judgments about the dark. We think it's wrong. We want to stop it. But there's a part of us that's within that darkness. There's that white dot in the black dot. There's a part of us that's within the darkness. And what you do with your lives will affect that darkness, because you're within it. Because although we see it as being other, that darkness, and not part of us, and to be condemned, we exist within it. And what we do will affect it. And similarly, we see ourselves as light. We see ourselves as good and separate from that darkness. But there's a bit of darkness within us. That bit that wants to control, that would do things to make that darkness come to heel, that thinks that we're right, and therefore what we do justifies the end that we're seeking. We use all those dark bits within us. We have that darkness within us, and by acknowledging it, we also acknowledge, as the Tao Te Ching says, that your enemy is the shadow that you yourself cast. And you can even see that darkness in the life of Jesus. The flashes of anger when Jesus clears the temple from the moneylenders. You can see that within that, using almost the tools of darkness within that. And also this quote, which when you read it, you think, why would Jesus say this? But he says, "Do not think I've come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set man against his father, and daughter against his mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a person's enemies will be those of his household. You know, these are sort of things that we see as being things that someone dark would say. And they are, because everything contains both. Even Jesus contains both. We can use that negative within our positive to help us. We're bound up in both light and darkness. No matter how much we vilify darkness as being the other, we're connected. And therefore, what we do has an impact on both the light that's around us and on the darkness, which also surrounds us. And we can affect that darkness directly with our own actions because we're connected to it. It's a sort of spiritual environment. We're connected to it. Picture that darkness. You know, look at how it's represented in your view of the world. You know, where you would see darkness and yourself being light, and like-minded ones of you being light, and where the darkness is, wherever evil you imagine is at work in the world. You're directly connected to that and can work on it within your life, and in doing so make a difference, because you're connected to that order in life that brings love into the world. And if you're buying into all of this, then, you know, this is the scenario. What you do in the privacy of your heart comes out into the world and changes it. It changes the opposites on the spectrum, and it includes them in love. And as we've said before, you know, love is giving with no expectation of return. And as we're doing this out of love, you know, do not expect to see a result. You know, don't go again, you know, do all this stuff. Say, well, nothing happened. You know, don't expect to see a result. Just know what you know. Know what you know and act out of that. That's the important thing to do. Know what you know and act out of that. Don't be bought by the appearances of what's happening or not happening, because it's deeper than that. It's all the way through history, that lovely Gandhi quote that, you know, tyrants and things that no matter how they carry on, they, you know, always fail. Love always comes through in the end. So we really have to ask our question about our life in the 21st century, you know, our life now. What are the opposites? And how do we enable those opposites to fulfill each other? Black and white, birth and death, male and female, left and right in politics. How do we bring about the fulfillment that creates a unity of consciousness? A consciousness where all aspects work together for the same end. That's what we're trying to do. Arrive at a point where all aspects work together for the same end. And it sounds idealistic. You know, and if it does, that is just a place on the spectrum of unity and disunity, of dual and non-dual, because we're always looking at it from a partial perspective. We always look at it and then we judge what we see. We look at it from partiality, and therefore it seems impossible from our partial perspective because we're not looking at it from a whole. Ian McGilchrist, in his book, The Matter of Things, says, there is the reality that from any one standpoint, only a partial view is possible. The opposition of standpoints is a way of speaking of difference wrought by context. As Whitehead puts it, there are no whole truths. All truths are half-truths. It is in trying to treat them, these half-truths, as whole truths, that plays the devil. We get caught up in the half-truths. Each truth conceals another, opposing truth, that becomes apparent as soon as we move from the abstract to the real world context. Moreover, we need both the vision that reveals separation and the vision that reveals union. You need both. The vision that reveals separation, the vision that reveals separation, and the vision that reveals union. You can see both separation and union in this picture. You need both. He goes on, according to the 20th century Zen master Suzuki, we have to understand things in two ways. One way is to understand things as interrelated. The other way is to understand ourselves as quite independent of everything. Once again, Whitehead comes to mind. To have seen it from one side only is not to have seen it. The problem arises when we're so anxious to avoid contradiction that we're tempted to dismiss or prove to be wrong one of the alternatives, both of which are needed. And I'm going to next week talk more about this union and separation and how we hold that together. But our role, I think, in the 21st century is to be able to look at life from both sides, to see not opposites that divide, but a spectrum that can lead to fulfillment. And I think that our challenge is to take that into our lives and to work with it. Would anybody like to say anything? Tracy, thank you.
Thank you. It's an interesting to think about these things. And in ways you can say, oh yes, there should be a balance. You look at things from both sides. But when something is said so angrily and so loud and so in your face, it's hard not to say, oh, well, what's the other side of that? How do we make a balance of that? It's hard to not to react. And I think that, the separation becomes difficult not to encounter when you have such loud, angry voices on one side, and then, how do you create the peace? How do you create the balance within that?
I think that's a great question. And I think that when we try and work out how to create that balance, it's where we're looking at to do the work. If we think that the work has to be done on the outside, then we'll think that what we need to do is we need to engage on the outside and do all the stuff on the outside and have it be going on in that particular way. But all we're doing then is we're dealing in the same material, exactly the same material. We're just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We're just saying, I want them over there. No, I want them over here. And you're working on the outside. But if you realize that the actual work is done within, that the work is done here, then we're not reacted. We're not tempted. I mean, of course we are, because we're human. But we know somewhere intrinsically that is where the work has to be done. And therefore, our attention is in a different place. And that enables us to, stand in front of that tank with your bag, your supermarket bag. It enables you to just be there and know that there's a power that we're connected to that is infinitely more powerful if we would but connect with it and have confidence in it. Thank you. Bruce, yes.
I'll add to Tracy's comment. Arthur Brooks and Tim Shriver are sort of leading the cause for dignity, in the sense that the opposite would be that America's become addicted to contempt. And with echo chambers and, naturally we're wired to sort of worry about the stranger or the other, tribe that we're going to wipe out or whatever. And so I encourage everybody to download. It's a very simple app called the Dignity Index, and every day there's a little flashcard, and they sort of give a quote from somebody in the public sphere, and you have to sort of say on a scale from 1 to 8, what is this? And 5 is basically I'm going to just objectively sort of gather all the information. I don't have any contempt for other people. I don't have any empathy for them. I'm just neutral at 5. But 6, 7, 8 starts to be, and I'm empathetic with these people. I mean, they obviously got their fears and their pain and whatever. And so it's a very simple but powerful kind of tool. And this is where Heather's going this Sunday.
Yeah, we're investing in Tim Shriver's Dignity Index. Heather, at the moment, there's a conference happening in Utah with Tim, and that's where Heather is today. She's going to that conference for us to represent the Aspen Chapel at that conference and to see what we can do as partners with Tim on that. So thank you for that. Anybody else like to say anything? Yes, Christina. Thank you.
I really love what you're saying, and I just want to add to it that it can also be seen from a deeper, more personal level of that which we dislike in others is really related to what we've disowned in ourselves. So if my biggest fear is to feel separate, there's an againstness there. There's a pain, a deep longing, and I'm not going to want to feel that because it can feel like existential angst. And so then when I perceive it outside of me, I want to get rid of it because it might, by chance, remind me of my own deep pain. So I'm not very good at this, but I practice when I don't like something to really ask myself, when I don't like something out there, to ask myself, where does something similar to that lie within me that I haven't given acceptance and forgiveness and love and understanding around? Because if I can forgive myself for something similar that I've done or that I'm inside of, I'm more apt to have compassion for it happening outside of me. And it's always like this beautiful U-turn, looking outside and then noticing what happens within. And can I do my own inner work so that I can be at peace with what's going on outside of me and with an acceptance? Doesn't mean I agree with it, but it does mean I won't meet it with againstness, meet againstness with more of my own againstness. So that helps me, but I'm definitely a student in this, and it's a lifetime struggle.
Yeah. Well, I think what that does, we really don't want to own our own darkness. We don't want to own that if we look really in there, we could be a complete controlling so-and-so, just in the way that we condemn. And this is how cults are formed. These people, and most of these cults, people have an experience of how marvelous they are. They have a big experience of the divine and things like that. And they just think of themselves as totally marvelous, but they don't own their darkness. And so when the darkness starts to appear, they can't recognize it. When they start to become controlling and saying, no, this is the only way, you have to do it this way, follow my thing, drink the Kool-Aid. They just don't recognize the darkness that's there. But if you do own that darkness that's within you, if you do see that and I know that I can be I have a thing written above my bed, I don't really, but see, I will not start a new cult. The truth of the matter is that, all of us can be like that, and we know that. And we just have to own that darkness rather than pretend that we've got rid of it. Because, like the yin and yang symbol, it's within us all, and you're not going to get rid of it because it's there, it's part of who we are. Thank you. That's great. Yes, I'll go to Donna and then Nick. Yeah, Donna.
Thank you. I so appreciate the dimension of your concept today that you added. So much, it's like adding to the notion of the whole is more than the sum of its parts, and that none of us can represent the whole, the total, the right. And it also makes me think about, I think it was Martin Luther King who said, unless all of us are free, none of us are free. And I'm thinking right now of children in the world, unless all of us are fed, none of us
Yes.
are satisfied. So anyway, I appreciate all the dimension you've added to that sense of totality.
Well, I love what you said about being fed, because to me that is the most important thing, really. Our world will be transformed when we all decide the most important thing is to feed everybody. And that is more important than fighting everybody.
Right.
And we've got the money to do it if we stop fighting everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. That was lovely. Nick?
I just recently saw something that through an electron microscope, they took pictures of the quantum entanglement of two electrons.
Yeah.
And it absolutely 100% looks exactly like the yin and yang symbol.
Yeah, really?
100%. Like it is one here, both different colors.
Amazing.
It's fantastic if you look it up. But it just breaks it down to the fact that it doesn't just permeate our life esoterically.
Yeah.
It's down to the quantum level.
Yeah.
That this is acting. But yeah, somewhere along the line, some Taoist monk figured out that the same thing that we're figuring out now in the 21st century with electron microscopes. So it's pretty wild.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Very
sure.
wild. And it's our challenge right now.
Yeah.
All of this is our challenge. It really is our challenge. Great.